Before we get into today's video, please quickly check below to see if you've subscribed. It's totally free and allows you to never miss one of our videos.
Ferdur and Lithic screamed as the horrible shapes loomed at them with their odd, spindly limbs and their dark, stony smiles. The things were only vaguely visible from within the whirling death all around them, and it was even more difficult to see with the heavy protective cocoon restricting their vision. Were they moving? They might be. Ferdur couldn't tell. The two Taraxians could only make out one thing for certain. The strange creatures were made of water, the substance that melted a Taraxian's carapace like wax near a plasma beam. "Some sort of earthling guardian beast," Ferdur wailed as he grasped Lithic's upper arm and pulled her away. "The trees! Make for the trees!" They were trapped out here in the cold, trapped because they were foolish enough to believe a forecast, and it turned out that human weathermen were just as bad as the Taraxian forecast dupes. Now a single misstep could kill them. The new protective cocoons issued to Taraxians working on Earth were far more durable than previous models, but all it took was one cut. "Faster, Ferdur! Faster!" Lithic shouted. "I didn't see any sensory organs except the eyes. Maybe we can lose them." "Good idea, Lith," Ferdur called, his 4 pillar-like legs pumping to build up speed. The snow was churning up behind the pair, but it was hardly noticeable with how hard it was snowing. The wind was howling like a Tremerian morn horn, and Ferdur could feel the buzzing of his body as fear fully woke it and drove it past his normal limits. He could barely see, he could barely hear, and his movements were slowed and restricted by the protective cocoon that was keeping him alive. Rather than trying to compensate for any of this, Ferdur's mind was busy conjuring phantoms and nightmares. Memories of the images they had been shown on what happens to a Taraxian exposed to water flashed through his mind. The news report of the dead, partially melted Taraxians found around the city last month. Footage of the pirate attack on the embassy that had required him and Lith to ship out here and do repairs in the first place. Rumors about what the humans did to the pirates that fled. Horror stories told by the embassy staff about the water-filled things that lurked around Earth. It slid into his mind along with the imminent threat from the snow until a nice slurry of terror was threatening to reduce him to a 10-foot-tall screaming crystalline statue. It was supposed to have been a relaxing walk through the human city's small nature preserve, a thing they called a park. After months of being cooped up in the embassy repairing damage and upgrading systems, Fur and Lith would finally get to observe native humans in their own habitat. They would get to see just how many of the outrageous rumors surrounding the humans were true. Sure, it meant donning the cumbersome protective cocoons, but they couldn't return home to Taraxia without being able to tell everyone they'd braved the water-rich surface of Earth at least once. It would be exciting, relaxing, and, Fur hoped, just a little bit romantic. It was none of those things because on a day that was supposed to be chilly but sunny, the clouds had rolled right up and tried to kill them with a sudden and brief blizzard. Before there had been snow everywhere, yes, but it had been in piles and neatly shoveled away from the winding paths of the park. When the snow came, they were in the heart of the park, and if Fur was being honest, he had been too busy observing the strange human customs, and Lith, to pay attention to the way home. Standard procedure was to return to the embassy immediately when water began falling from the sky, even frozen. It should have been easy, but the park was big and they could not see. They were lost, the snow filling the air, whipping their cocoons relentlessly. Fur had faith in the new suit's resilience, but it was nerve-wracking for it to be tested like this. He nearly jumped when Lithic laid a hand on his shoulder and gently pulled him behind a tree. The two looked around. There was no sign of pursuit, for now at least. "I think it worked," Lithic said, turning back to Ferdur. "What now? I can barely see." "We should stay put for a little while," Furrider said, his mind still racing, though the fear was draining away. It'd be all too easy to trip and tear our cocoons fumbling around like this. We might also draw attention from those things, whatever they were. Best to wait a bit.
What do you think they were?
Lith asked.
They looked like living snow.
Some of them had strange, spindly limbs, Furrider said. I think we can probably outrun them if they do find us. I didn't see legs, just that odd spherical body.
What if they don't need legs because the bottom sphere can roll?
Lith asked. That's... Fur wanted to say it was ridiculous, but so were beings made of living snow. Hopefully not the case, he finished lamely. There was silence again, save for the wind and snow all around them. I guess you're kind of regretting going along with my idea now, huh? Fur asked.
Not really. It's not like we knew this would happen, though someone should have,
Lith said, her tone dropping.
If I find that damn weatherman, I'm going to pop him in the jaw, water blood or not,
she sighed.
Maybe we should have toured a human shopping center instead. Honestly, I just really needed to get away from the embassy for a day. All anyone is talking about is the murders, and before that it had been the pirate attack,
Lith said.
And before that, the ambassador got melted by a leaky pipe. It's like there's a curse on the place. I just wanted to be reminded there was a wider world out there, one where bad things didn't always happen.
Right, Fur said, nodding. Well, I guess I messed that up for you, huh? Should have picked a better day, and I really should have brought communicators or a map.
Fur, if you could control the weather, we wouldn't be stuck in data system maintenance jobs. I'll call you a rockhead about the rest later,
Lith said. Fur could see her glittering smile through her snow-smeared face shield, and immediately felt a little better.
We saw some really glittery stuff, at least. Do you think anyone will believe the humans actually strap blades to their feet and slide on the surface of a frozen lake?
Such madness! Fur exclaimed. Like tempting the lords of fate themselves. Imagine what would happen if the ice gave way. Even a human could not survive engulfment in water for long. They tempt death and smile and sing while doing it.
Or that big fight the little humans had, hurling snow at each other like shardlings with pebbles,
Lith asked. I don't know which I'm more amazed by, Fur said. That the small humans have their immunity to water developed from such a young age, or that their warlike spirit already calls them to battle with the universe's most deadly substance. That group of cheering children could have killed us in seconds were it not for our cocoons. He paused. What about that big hill?
The one where all the humans were sliding down on flat pieces of wood, metal, and plastic?
Lith asked.
Oh, that actually looked fun.
Lithic!
No, really,
Lithic said.
What did they call it? Sledding? It looked really fun. We could probably give it a try with our protective cocoons on. It's not like the other winter rituals where contact with snow is a given.
Moving at speed like that, you're asking for something to tear the cocoon, Fur said. Lithic looked down.
I suppose,
Lith said, folding both sets of her arms. Fur thought for a moment, then spoke before the silence could grow sullen. Well, actually it might be possible to replicate it, Fur said. We'd just have to find something to take the place of snow. Perhaps freezing a liquid chemical less reactive to our physiology, or one of the dust compounds in sufficient quantities.
Maybe,
Lith said, perking up.
They'd never let us try at the embassy. When we get back to Taraxia, though, we can see how many want a taste of the crazed and ferocious entertainments of the humans. In fairness, we can even start a little park of our own, sell tickets.
It'd be more interesting than another tour as a glorified repair tech, Fur agreed. Lith laughed and laid back. the danger of her situation seemingly forgotten.
It wasn't such a bad walk,
Lith admitted.
right up until the snow started. We might even look back on some of it fondly.
I guess you're right, Fur said, the small smile growing on his face hidden by the lower cowl of his cocoon.
But only if we get back safely,
she finished. The two said nothing for a while, the wind the only sound as it gradually began to snow less and less. Sudden as a snap, the snow squall passed, replaced by a gentle fall of glittering ice flakes. When the pair wiped their face shields clear, they could see again. Lith began to get up, but Fur put a hand on her upper arms. "Don't move," he said quietly, pointing. "They're still there." Far away, through several layers of trees, in the middle of a snowfield freshly renewed by the weather, were the dreaded snow creatures. From this distance, it was hard to pick out detail, but Fur could see there were 7 of them, arranged in a circle. Some had thick, snowy limbs, and others had spindly ones that strongly resembled twigs to fur. Some had scraps of human clothing on them, and Fur wondered if they were from previous victims, or perhaps the snow creatures were imitating the far more deadly humans out of respect or fear. Dark nodules, usually black, seemed to form the eyes, but were present elsewhere as well. Fur didn't know what to make of them.
"They're not moving,"
Lith noted.
"Maybe they're dormant."
"No, can't be," Fur said. "They lunged at me through the snow." They did lunge, didn't they? Fur remembered the panicked flight just minutes ago, but his memory was smudged and blurred. Did the creatures lunge from the snow, or did he simply almost blunder into them in his desperate flight to find shelter?
"Maybe you just got too close and they swiped in self-defense,"
Lith said, trying to focus her optic nodes to see better.
"They're not moving at all."
"Lith, look over there!" Marching steadily towards the circle of 7 snow things were 8 humanoid shapes that ranged from tiny to small. They were swathed in clothes so heavy and covering that they might as well have been protective cocoons of their own. Fur found it somewhat heartening to know that even the dreaded humans needed some sort of protective cocoon in weather like this, even if their coats allowed them far more freedom of movement than the metallic wraps that covered every inch of the 2 Taraxians. They continued, approaching the circle of snow creatures with no fear or hesitation. Human children.
"Fern, we've got to warn—" "Wait, what are they doing?"
Lithic asked as the tiny humans picked up speed, breaking out into a short jog.
"Are they charging the monsters? How brave!"
"Perhaps the beasts are meant to guard the children," Fur said. "They show no fear. Perhaps they have tamed the things." Indeed, the snow creatures did not move or give any sign of acknowledgement as the children reached the circle and immediately began to scoop up snow and form it into new shapes. Slowly, as the aliens watched, 5 new snow creatures rose to join their brethren. The younger children created simple beasts, all spheres of snow and rocky smiles. The older children created ones with more detail, more lifelike features. "They're creating an army of snow warriors," Fur whispered. "Maybe to protect the city from more rogue Taraxians? How can children possess such power?" Lithic was silent, but Fur could swear the temperature somehow dropped even lower. Then she spoke.
"Fur, dear, are you sure that you saw these things move?"
she asked. "Well, fairly sure," Fur said, "but it was hard to see. We were running."
"Because those just look like crude sculptures of snow now that I have a good look at them,"
Lithic said. Furdur could virtually see Lith's opinion of him catch fire like an Oborian bulk shuttle and break apart in the atmosphere. Perhaps that's what they are," Furdur said. "Before the change."
"The what?"
"I heard it from one of the embassy guards. An ancient human legend of the Frosted One, Fur said, continuing to stare at the tiny humans. A human replica made of snow that was given life by a cloth crown. It guarded the humans of its town until someone erased one of the ice letters on its head. Then it fell back into ice and the town was invaded by soldiers inside a wooden horse.
Doesn't sound right,
Lith said. Fur shrugged. Well, I mean, I might be remembering a few things wrong, but that's the gist of it, Fur said. Maybe the humans are preparing vessels for crowns, or maybe they are simply imitations, or maybe...
Tyraxians? From the embassy? Out while it's snowing? What on earth are you two doing behind those trees?
A voice came, tired but warm. Furder turned to see an old human male watching them with a quizzical expression on his face. Furder didn't know much about humans yet, but he knew that both Tyraxians and humans smiled, and the old man was wearing a small one, barely visible through his bushy white beard. He wore a dark winter coat, a heavy scarf, an old hat of some beaten dark cloth, and was leaning slightly on a silver cane. Furder wasn't quite sure how to respond, but Lithic was always quicker than him in social situations.
Hiding,
she whispered. Ah, the old man nodded. He waited a little bit. From?
The Snow Warriors,
Furder said in hushed tones.
The Snow Warriors,
the old man said. He leaned on his cane and bent himself a little to the right, getting a slight view through the whirling snow at the circle of icy golems being built by the cadre of kids.
I see. You're not only from the embassy, you're new.
What do they want from us?
Lithic asked. The old man sighed.
Judging from the state of them, a carrot for a nose or a nice pipe for their mouths. But children these days aren't much for tradition, he said. They're just snowmen, a holiday tradition around here. Sculptures of icy water. What made you think they were, snow warriors?
Furder turned and looked harder at the circle of 7 snowmen out in the field. Without panic and fear to cloud his thoughts, and a heavy snowfall to cloud his vision, the smiling piles of snow were far less impressive. Lithic was right. They were just sculptures. Sculptures of snow, sure, but sculptures nonetheless. He felt like an idiot. Then he remembered Lithic had seen all of this, and felt like a massive idiot instead.
Furder began. We were panicking because of the snow.
And the murders,
Lithic said quietly, fidgeting with her cocoon's secure straps, as if to make sure they were still attached.
Murders?
The man asked, eyebrows raised.
6 of them, Furder said. All Tyraxians, all in the last few days, partially melted. The embassy thinks it might be a human that wants revenge for the Void Blade pirate attack on the city a few months back. But we were attacked too. Why would someone blame us for that?
Well, now,
the old man said, slowly approaching the pair with measured steps, his cane crunching into the snowy ground with the regularity of a metronome.
You should know that, shouldn't you? Mistaking children's playthings for monsters. Fear, panic. These things reach past your mind and into deeper, more primal territory. Anger, sorrow. There's barely a limit on what emotions can make you do. I don't know too much about Tyraxians. You have something like adrenaline? The sudden urge to fight or flee?
We call it fear response,
Fur said. The man had reached the pair now, reaching out to poke the 10-foot-tall Tyraxian in the chest. He had to reach up to do so. The old man was only 5'6".
Isn't it somewhat reassuring that I'm made of flesh and bone, and so much water as you Tyraxians fixate on, and you are made of salt-like compounds, yet we both have emotions? You get mad, you get afraid. And I hear Taraxians even smile the same way humans do, the old man said. I find that fascinating. But yes, imagine you lost someone close to you. How much logic would enter into your response?
Fur knew the answer, but didn't want to admit it. The old man smiled and spoke again.
Now then, let's have no more of such dark talk. That's not the sort of time this is, you know. Anger, fear, sorrow, those aren't the only emotions that can drive people to act, you know. This is the time of year when the brighter half of the soul comes out to play. Love, friendship, generosity, laughter, kindness. It's what we call the season of giving here on, well, this part of Earth, anyway. We humans use the time to celebrate life with each other.
Yes, we saw a human courtship ritual during the walk,
Furdir said.
The way they walked through the icy flakes of doom falling all around them, focused only on each other. Truly, it was a way to proclaim the ferocity of their love.
The old man chuckled.
That's not exactly what I meant, but it's true enough, I suppose. Love's a pretty powerful emotion by itself. Now then, let's get you two home. A winter wonderland is a fine place for people like me, but a little risky for you, I think.
The old man pointed to Lithic.
Your protective cocoon has a very small tear in it. Not enough to breach, but something to keep wary of.
Fur and Lith both turned to look, and Fur cursed himself for not noticing. There was indeed a tiny cut in the first layer of the metallic mesh. It must have gotten caught on something sharp during their flight. The old man continued.
You can probably make your way back to the embassy now that the snowfall has calmed down. But just in case...
The old man pointed south.
You won't be able to see the pathways with all the snow, so just cut through the trees that way. There shouldn't be anything in your way. Eventually, you'll see the park's fence. Just follow it east and you'll hit the entrance gate. I trust you can find your way from there.
The old man frowned, taking his scarf off and proffering it to Lith.
Here, take this too. It's a pretty big scarf. Spread it out and drape it across your cocoon. It should help prevent any further damage until you get home.
That's quite generous of you, sir,
Fur said, turning towards the indicated direction.
We shouldn't waste any more time with a damaged cocoon. Thank you. Come on, Lith, let's get going.
Wait,
Lith said, carefully unsealing one of the outer pockets of her cocoon. She picked at the contents until her fingers emerged, clutching a single shimmering shard of crystal.
You said it's the season of giving, yes? It's not right that you give me a thing and don't get something back. It's not honorable. Here, it's just a little light shard, but please take it. I don't have any currency on me.
The old man smiled warmly, his eyes twinkling as he took the shining rock.
Ah, it glows like a well-fed hearth. A token like this is more valuable to me anyway. But now my poor worn scarf is not enough. Here.
The old man pulled his hat off his head, revealing a well-tamed mass of snowy white hair. He handed the hat to Fur.
If you ever get the urge to try your own hand at snowman building, or just want a souvenir, it's been a pleasure to meet both of you, but I have to be going. I have a tight schedule to keep. The both of you, farewell.
Farewell,
Lithic said, saying the unfamiliar phrase as if tasting a new dish.
Diamond shield you,
Furdir said, slamming his fist against his chest, lightly, so as not to risk damage to the cocoon. The old man laughed, waved, and slowly walked away, his cane crunching the snow in that same rhythmic way. The two Taraxians watched him go for a moment despite their hurry.
What a nice human,
Lithic said.
Yes, too bad we didn't meet him on a drier day,
Fur said, turning to cut south as instructed. The snow crunched under his heavy feet, and even though he knew the protection there was the heaviest, the sound unnerved him. He pushed the thoughts from his mind. He'd be safe soon enough. His walk slowed as a thought struck him.
"You know, Lith,"
he said as the pair's route took them near the circle of snowmen,
"maybe I'm looking at all this the wrong way."
Oh?
Lith asked.
"Yeah, we're so scared of all the water on Earth, we're not appreciating how wondrous it is that we have technology enough to let us go out and see it,"
Fur said, tapping his cocoon.
"The suits are not perfect, but look at everything we've seen today. Most Taraxians will never see snow, or how the humans dance and play in it. We were having a great time until the snowfall came, but even with the stuff flying all around us, we're okay. I mean, we still need to be cautious, but—"
Fair. That's a lot of words just to say we overreacted,
Lith said. Fur laughed.
Yeah, I guess it is,"
he said, approaching one of the snowmen in the circle, a simple construct of 3 snow spheres, 2 icicle arms, and a smile made of small stones. Fur could hardly believe he had been so afraid of them before, water or not. Everything was so strange here, a world where water wasn't considered dangerous, a world that he and Lith walked through, but barely touched. He looked down at the cloth hat held in his hands and smiled. The little snowman seemed like it needed something.
"Well, why not?"
Fur said, putting the hat on the crudely shaped snowman. The snowman kept smiling with its half-crescent of stones, but to Fur it seemed that now the smile was a thankful one.
"It's the season of giving, little snow shardling. Wear it well."
Lith laughed.
Now you can say you too built one of the feared snowmen.
Fur turned to her.
"Yeah, well, I don't want to be the only one not giving gifts."
The sound of crunching snow hit the 2 of them, and they looked around, expecting to see the old man with his cane, or perhaps the troop of children coming back to inspect their works again. But there was nothing.
Where's that sound coming from?
Lith asked as the sound grew louder and louder. The snow had almost stopped by now. It was easy to see. The snowfield was bare up to the trees, save for where it had been trod on. There was no sign of what was making the noise, but it kept getting closer. Fur's optic nodes shook a little as he finally saw what was causing it. The snow was being crushed by nothing in the distinct pattern of 4 circular indentations, creating a path towards them from the tree line. A path of Taraxian footprints that was steadily growing and almost upon them. It could only be one thing.
"Cloaking device!"
Fur shouted as the footprints picked up speed.
"Lith, run! It's a void blade!"
Something large and hard slammed into him, throwing him to the ground. The hiss of something sharp slicing the air above his head filled his aurals. He'd almost been cut. Blindly, Fur lashed out with a fist. It hit something solid, and he heard a brief grunt.
"I can't be cut when it's snowing! The cocoon will get breached! The snow will get in!"
Fur thought, his mind even more panicked than when the snow squall hit. The fear response overwhelmed him, and he turned into a storm of lashing limbs, striking at the air with 4 fists and 2 of his 4 feet. Sometimes he hit only air, but occasionally he heard more grunts and felt something connect.
"Stupid planet scratcher!"
A voice hissed from the air, using the Void Blade term for everyone not a space pirate.
"I'll make it slow for the— Ah!"
A sphere of snow shot through the air and crashed against something above Fur. Sparks flew, and Fur caught a brief glimpse of a Void Blade in a very ramshackle and patched-up protective cocoon. He saw Lith screaming curses and packing snow with her 4 arms, throwing massive snowballs just as she'd seen the children from earlier do. Snowballs that were mere fun for human children, but a deadly weapon against Taraxians. Another snow sphere hit, and another, and more sparks came, the cloaking field failing at the impact of solid, clinging matter. Finally, it failed completely, and the space pirate was fully revealed. The snow clung to his cocoon, but found no breach. The pirate laughed.
Sorry, Crystal Tips. You made my cloak malfunction, but I took no half measures patching up this cocoon. Now 2 more will make my score 8. 8 Taraxians dead for helping those sloshing water bags defeat us, he said,
raising his upper arms, which had been carved and shaped into wickedly sharp razor blades. Fur braced himself for the death blow, but the pirate gave a muffled shout instead as a column of ice struck him. Fur turned and saw the impossible. The crude little snowman, with its gifted hat and cheerful smile, had caught the pirate by the throat, one of its icicle arms suddenly growing from a watery spike to a sculpted limb of frozen water. As Fur watched, the snow around the snowman shook and rolled towards it, quickly being absorbed into it. The 3 Taraxians could only stare in wonder as the snowman grew and grew, becoming 20 feet tall, with limbs more shaped like an ancient warrior statue than a children's creation. The void blade screamed and slashed at the ice arm holding it. The sharpened blades of the pirate should have been able to cut through the frozen water with ease, but all he managed were chips and chunks here and there. Veins of snow shot from the snowman's shoulder and replaced the cut sections with hard-packed snow in seconds. The snowman seemed to consider the pirate for a moment, then reached out with its other hand and began to peel the protective cocoon off the alien like a candy bar wrapper. The void blade shrieked as his crystal carapace made contact with the gently falling snow, sizzling divots already visible. Still smiling, the snowman finished unwrapping the pirate, and before he could scream for too much longer, jammed the entirety of the murderer into his snowy torso. The pirate thrashed and screamed, but could do little else as he was melted, his liquids freezing and adding more mass to the snowman, who stood there contentedly, smiling. The last thing Fur saw was the pirate's head emerge for a brief moment, giving a wail of despair as the snowman gently pushed it back inside. Fur and Lithic ran, scrambling through the snow and heedless of any damage to their cocoons as the fear response overpowered them.
"Snow warriors!" Fur gasped. "Snow warriors!"
It was hours later, when Fur fully regained his senses, and even later after he'd given his report and had been given a clean bill of health by the embassy infirmary. He and Lith were resting in great crystal cradles now, a light dusting of medi-powder over them. Their cocoons had mostly held, but in their blind flight there had been a handful of minor breaches. The resulting injuries would heal quickly, he was told. Only a few drops of water had gotten through, and near nothing vital. This, of course, was not what Fur was thinking about. As he went into his story for the 5th time, the doctor stamped his feet with impatience.
"We have been over this already," the doctor said, crossing all 4 of his arms. "Despite how fantastical your story was, we sent a force to the park to investigate. We found nothing like you described. No giant snow warrior rampaging around. Now, we did find a destroyed cloaking device and protective cocoon near a circle of 8 snow sculptures that corroborate the presence of a void blade. We also managed to isolate some liquid that we later confirmed to be a mixture of melted Taraxian carapace and water. After interrogating the locals in the area, we've concluded that you encountered the murderer we've been hunting, but our job was done for us. A local, probably in snow camouflage, breached his cocoon and melted him out of revenge for the attack some months back. In your excitable state, you thought you saw something else."
"We know what we saw,"
Lith murmured. The doctor sighed.
"What you saw was impossible, so that leaves the next possibility, which is you two going snow mad. You are restricted to the embassy for the remainder of your stay. That's not a punishment. It's for your own safety." It's clear you cannot handle the stress of operating in a water-filled environment.
The doctor's tone softened.
But don't feel bad. Thanks to your little walk, we solved the murders and got the best stress test the new cocoons could have asked for.
Thanks, Fur said, his tone hollow. Are we done?
For now, yes. Now get some rest. We'll release you two to your own quarters in the morning. Oh, that reminds me,
the doctor said, reaching over to a cabinet and pulling something small and dark out of it.
Here.
The doctor presented Fur with a battered old hat of dark cloth.
A nice old man near the scene said you forgot your hat.